And some are saying it's about time, right? Thanksgiving's next
Totally.
week.
Yeah,
We're finally getting some snow in the higher elevations, which is great news for the ski resorts, by the way. And there is the snow moving out of the northern plains into the upper Midwest. So it's snowing currently in the northern and western parts of Minnesota, not quite into Minneapolis yet, where last I checked, you've been in the 40s this morning, so still a little too warm for it. Here we've got Grand Rapids, Minnesota, reporting light snow. We are right at the freezing mark, but if you factor in the wind, which is really picking up, it feels more like 23, and those winds are gusting over 20 miles per hour. And this morning, Minnesota already seeing some of the snow from Winter Storm Argos. Grand Rapids under a winter storm warning, and that's where we find meteorologist Mike Seidel with that wind blowing around. Going to make for some tricky travel, Mike. Yeah, right. And Atlanta, by the way, I was just checking the observation. They are reporting some smoke at the airport, although the past couple of days, I got to say, it hasn't been that bad because we've been more with a southerly flow, and most of the wildfires are burning north of Atlanta. Right now, we've got 53 degrees. We missed a record by just a few degrees yesterday. We're going to be in the upper 70s again this afternoon, so it's quite warm for this time of the year. Heading out to the Georgia Dome for Saturday's Georgia State football game. You want to bundle up for that one and for your tailgate as well. It's going to be much, much cooler this weekend. In fact, it all starts here across the plains, crashing temperatures. We are concerned about a frost or freeze here in the southern plains, and here's why. You've got the cold front moving on through, ushering in those northerly winds, and temperatures are going to come crashing down in Dallas, where it might be mild right now, 70 degrees, but that's probably your warmest of the entire day. We're going to have a much cooler afternoon as the front makes progress, the wind shift into the north. We call a blue norther, actually, in this part of the country, and you'll see those temperatures dropping down into the 50s for Oklahoma City, while it's still mild because you still have the southerly flow out ahead of it across the mid-Mississippi Valley, the southeast, still looking very warm until tomorrow. The front finally gets all the way to the coast, and that ushers in the cooler air. Temperatures actually going below average for a change. Here's a look at what else is coming up on AMHQ.
It'll be a world of temperatures that will be in the 30s, big changes, and you can really see it illustrated beautifully or disturbingly on this map right here.
I love your roller coaster reference because as you're going down the roller coaster, what's hitting you? The wind, right?
Absolutely.
In your face, right? And it's going to be really cold in terms of wind chills across the northern and central plains. Big temperature drop. Look at the temperature change in Wichita. 20 degrees colder than this exact time yesterday. Out ahead of it, Reynolds, it's still warm. We got the southerly winds.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, we got some big changes. Minneapolis right now, and you know, it's not just temperatures, it's also going to be precipitation, where in Minneapolis you'll have the rain first and the snow is going to follow, but then we're going to be following the cold air surging its way into places eventually like St. Louis, Des Moines, and eventually Chicago too, as we showed you.
So yeah, we're seeing the highs already for the day, probably in a lot of spots here in the northern and central plains. Minneapolis will actually get our first freeze around the same time we're getting our first snow of the season.
You know, there's probably a conversation that's being held this morning with kids going to the bus stop, and parents are saying, kids, seriously, you need the parka. And the kids are saying, I don't think so.
Or how about do your homework, even though it's snowing outside,
that
right?
too. Hey, our homework is going to show you that we've got this area of low pressure that for tomorrow is going to be a big weather changer for your weekend. If you're thinking about mild conditions are going to last, I don't think so, especially into Sunday. We see this driving up into parts of, say, Maine and back into Vermont, and cold air falling right behind.
And you know, I'm from New York. I love lake effect snow.
Of course.
I'm always fascinated by where those bands set up, and we could certainly see that going on. Northwestern PA, western New York State as well. Chicago, we're going to come crashing down tomorrow, 41.
Oh, you're right about that. Some big changes coming for millions of you folks. Be ready for it. Hey, also, be ready for A-Rod.